make sure that you do your updates. Make sure that you get somebody who's doing the updates to take good care of it and to do the job properly. Because if it's not, you're going to end up with a huge problem later. The other reason why you want to make sure that you're doing your updates throughout the tenancy is that when you inevitably do want to sell the unit, you don't want to get hit with a $20,000 invoice to bring it up to snuff, because otherwise it's going to damage your resale and your re-rental. So always make sure that you maintain your property and keep it up to date and in good working order, as well as clean. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. This week we're going to be going over the July stats, as well as a couple of things that have been coming up as far as dealing with tenancies and some things that have been not awesome, but should be addressed to make sure that everyone is on the same page and doing well in their landlord and tenancy parts. So needless to say, the World Cup has finally come to an end. You'll notice that the streets are significantly less busy in downtown Vancouver, less parties, less parades and whatnot. So that is been a pretty good event as far as most people that I've spoken to. What we are seeing though is the furnished market is now reacting a little bit, because during that time, of course, there was many legally and illegally furnished units that were out for rent and people trying to capitalize on the sheer number of people that were visiting Vancouver. So we will see probably over the next course of, say, 2 or 3 months, the adjustment from the furnished units that were being rented in that. So that market will still be a little bit strange. It is of note, though, that the furnished units in Surrey, for some reason, have actually gone up in price across the board. So very interesting out there. Not exactly sure what's causing that. If you know, feel free to get a hold of us and tell us why. So on with the simple stats. The average price for a one-bedroom unfurnished unit in Greater Vancouver is currently at $2,089. This is a decrease of only $1 from last month. So over the course of the past 4 months, we've only seen the difference between them at $6. So it does quite look like over the past 4 months that we may have bottomed out as far as the rental prices go. That being said, this is a change of $143 from the same time July of last year. So there is still a decrease in the amount of rent prices that are being charged from last year. But that being said, month to month to month to month, I guess, as it's 4, is really only a difference between $6 from 4 months ago to current. So what it comes down to is I do believe that it has kind of leveled out, and we hopefully are at the bottom of the rent and hit that threshold of where the owners are willing to go. Now, that being said, of course, the news and whatnot has been pumping the airwaves, saying that there's a fire sale and all hell's breaking loose and this sort of thing. That is not exactly true, as the stats have shown that we have kind of hit that bottom range most likely. That being said, there are a lot of tenants that are asking landlords for a discount on their rent. This is going to be a very common thing, especially since it's being pushed that there's a fire sale, as I earlier just mentioned. Now, as a landlord, there's some things that need to be taken into consideration during this, such as what will a vacancy cost you? The vacancy, if you're using a property management company, usually will cost you 1/2 of 1 month's rent to get it re-rented. So there is these things to take into account, as well as the fact that you may not find a tenant right away. So it may be actually vacant for 1 month. That being said, of course, it's not completely 100% in the terrible realm for landlords. Reason being is because, are you thinking about selling it? It's much easier to sell a vacant home. So if your tenant asks for a discount, you say no, and then they decide to move on anyways, that might be in your best interest. Or were you thinking about doing some major renovations, which would have been a huge problem with somebody occupying it, such as doing the flooring or redoing the kitchen or something of this nature? So these are a couple of things to take into account, as well as, frankly, do you like your tenant? A lot of times a relationship in a tenancy and landlord will devolve and become quite caustic. So maybe if your tenant is asking for a discount and you don't want to give it and they decide to move out, maybe it's better to start over. Who knows? So these are a couple of things to take into account. That being said as well, on the tenancy side, do make sure that you take a look at what they're using to support their numbers. We've been noticing a lot with the tenants that have asked us about reducing the rent that they kind of cherry pick what they're looking at. So they'll be in a arbitrarily 850 square foot home that has a den, and the ones that they'll send you for a comparison and asking for $300 off is a 2-bedroom, but it's no den, or it's 650 square feet, or any of these sort of things that don't make them an exact comparable. So when that is sent to you from a tenant, make sure that you ask them for the actual ad itself and not just a screenshot, because it might be getting cherry picked. We've run across this a couple times in Brentwood, as there's a fairly large range between the ages of the building in there. So some of the 2-bedrooms, the newer ones in particular, are significantly smaller than the ones that are a little bit older. So do make sure that when this conversation comes up about reducing the rent, that you're taking a look at all the parts that are on the table, because it may not make sense to reduce that, as well as with the restrictions on rent increase, it is kind of a one-way street. So if you drop your rent $300, it's going to take you many years to build that back up to the same level that it was, which will be covering your repairs, mortgages, and so on and so forth. So do understand that it will be a one-way street, because once the market does recover, say in 3 years or so, you will not be able to ask your tenant to raise the rent up $300 again. So these are sort of things that you have to take into account, but don't get offended by somebody asking for a discount simply for the fact that in these times, everybody is a little bit tight. So maybe come to a happy medium and figure out a way to keep your tenancy, avoid the vacancy, and generally keep everything on the even keel. Now, the most expensive cities in Greater Vancouver are West Van at number 1, North Van at number 2, and Vancouver proper at number 3, with the least expensive being Surrey, followed by New Westminster and Coquitlam. So do keep in mind that these are averages within the cities. So it can change from one area of the city to another area. A simple example is Shaughnessy to UBC. There's a difference on 1-bedroom unfurnished units of 721. Now, those are both in Vancouver, but that is a huge range on your averages between those types of properties in the same city. So if you want to get a better idea of what's going on there, do feel free to contact a professional, since that is basically the numbers that we are running and the numbers that we're crunching to figure out exactly where a pricing should be and how it would operate the best. Now, I did touch earlier on the fact that people are tight these days. It's more expensive for groceries, it's more expensive for gas, it's generally more expensive for everything. What we've been noticing is that some landlords have been trying to cut corners, and people crack jokes and have the memes about painting over light sockets and stuff like this. Do understand that as an owner, you need to make sure that you're doing a good job of the maintenance that you're doing, and the maintenance that you should not, under any circumstances, be ignoring. We've been finding some people are hiring just the dirt cheapest people to do the work for them, and paint jobs are ridiculous, hitting roofs, painting over appliances in some cases. So you want to make sure that you're hiring somebody that is a representative of that industry, not just somebody who's decided that they're going to throw some paint on the wall and hope for the best. So you want to make sure that you are maintaining your unit. This is one of these things as well where it has ongoing conversations with a lot of the landlords that maintaining your unit is part of running your business. And kid yourself not, you being a landlord is a business. You're not here, obviously, just for charity. So make sure that you do your renovations, make sure you do your updates and all this, because that's what somebody living there would want. You would want that yourself. You wouldn't want to live in a place that looks horrible or isn't clean or doesn't have window coverings, you want to make sure that this place looks great, especially in the current market that we're in where the rents are down. You need to bring your A game every time. So make sure that you do your updates. Make sure that you get somebody who's doing the updates to take good care of it and to do the job properly, because if it's not, you're going to end up with a huge problem later. The other reason why you want to make sure that you're doing your updates throughout the tenancy is that when you inevitably do want to sell the unit, you don't want to get hit with a $20,000 invoice to bring it up to snuff, because otherwise it's going to damage your resale and your re-rental. So always make sure that you maintain your property and keep it up to date and in good working order, as well as clean. These are some major issues that have been coming up, and do not, under any circumstances, cut the corners, because while people are a little bit tight, they are not desperate. So that basically is mostly what we have to cover today. If there's anything that you guys have been thinking about, do message us, because we do get questions from time to time from our listeners. My name is Hayes. This has been Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.